Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. Um, Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation on Where Does Rain Go? Understanding how Stormwater is Managed in Omaha. My name is Kristen Jansen, and I am an AmeriCorps member serving with Conservation Nebraska's Common Ground program. Conservation Nebraska's mission is to protect our state's natural legacy by educating the public, supporting communities, and increasing civic engagement, which we accomplish through locally led education efforts and community engagement projects to address local conservation concerns. Before today's speaker, there are just a few housekeeping things to go over. Your cameras will remain off and you will be muted throughout the presentation. So please type any questions you have into the chat or the Q&A section, and we will answer those at some point during or after the presentation. This presentation will be recorded and will be uploaded to Conservation Nebraska's YouTube page within the next couple of weeks. So if you miss any part of today's presentation, would like to revisit any part or share it with others, you will be able to find it there. Following the presentation, we will have a very brief survey that should only take less than a minute to complete. Their survey helps support programming like this one, so we appreciate you taking the time to fill this out. If anyone in attendance is interested in speaking with a Conservation Nebraska member regarding conservation issues in Nebraska, or to find out more about what we do, I will put our email in the chat. So today we welcome Andy from Omaha Stormwater, who's going to speak about Omaha's stormwater management system. So I will just go ahead and let him take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Kristen. And I apologize at the onset. I do have a sore throat, so hopefully my voice comes across all right for you guys. Appreciate you being here. My name is Andy Szatko. I work for the city of Omaha in our public works department, and I work with our stormwater team to manage how stormwater flows through the city. And so today we'll be talking about big picture, how that happens. How does stormwater get managed within the city, and give some examples of some green infrastructure projects that we do to help utilize nature, plants, soils, natural landscapes to manage stormwater runoff closer to where the rain itself lands versus trying to pipe it efficiently off somewhere else. And so as we go forward, definitely put your questions in the chat. Happy to answer those questions as we go forward. And with that said, we'll get rolling. So the picture on the title slide here is kind of a West Omaha, subdivision with, Hy-Vee and outlots with various developments going on. We got a high school, we got another development in the foreground, and then a lot of residential homes in the background, nestled up against Zorinsky Lake. And so Zorinsky Lake is an example of a reservoir site that helps manage water as it comes through the city by slowing it down and trying to help manage flooding throughout the watershed, in particular those areas that are um, connected to Zorinsky and the Little Papio stream system. And so there's a lot that goes into managing stormwater, and it's multifaceted. There's a lot of us that work on it. I get to be here because the city wants to educate the public and kind of create some awareness for stormwater and how it works, and work together on it as we go forward. So real quick, what we'll do today, again, is go through and kind of understand stormwater in Omaha, how stormwater generally is broken down between the two main sewer types in Omaha, that being the combined sewer system or the CSO area, and then our separate storm sewer system, which is generally the west part of town. CSO is generally the east part of town. We'll talk about green infrastructure practices, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So what exactly is stormwater? And stormwater, simply put, is just precipitation that runs off the surface. And what you can see here in this particular screen is a thunderstorm right over downtown. So, this view is from Spring Lake Park, and storms really impact us in unique ways Every storm is different. Some are small, like this one. Some are big, but when water falls and lands on our downtown area, for example, there's not a whole lot of green space for that to soak in. And so we use storm sewers and other methods to move water away from buildings, places of business, so that our properties are protected, people stay safe. So when we're talking about stormwater, that's what we're talking about is just the rain falling on our city. Now, why do we manage stormwater? Already kind of alluded to it a little bit. Is we don't want to have our homes flooded or businesses, places of um, yeah, we frequent. Um, we want to make sure that they stay protected and they stay useful. This is a picture of Spring Lake Park, and Spring Lake Park is an example of a site on the east side of town, just south of the Henry Dooley Zoo. This is F Street in the foreground and about 19th Street. And the neighborhood and the city work together to be able to do a sewer separation in that particular area and restore the park, including the lake that's in there, back to what it was a long time ago and make it a community amenity. When we manage stormwater thoughtfully, there's a lot of benefits to be realized from it. And as we go through today, that's kind of what I want to make sure we hit on is stormwater is not a bad thing. Stormwater is just something we need to become aware of, embrace, and learn how to integrate using it to our advantage in our very unnatural urban spaces. So rain events over the past 15 years, it's kind of up or down, feast or famine. And this is a graphic I put pretty much in every single slideshow that I do to show Omaha gets 30 inches of average annual rainfall. And from this graph, what you can see is we hardly ever hit 30 inches exactly. A lot of times we're above it, a lot of times we're below it. And when you stop and look at the differences, for example, from 2020, which is where we had a very dry season, to a wet one like in 2015, you get almost 27 inches difference uh, in terms of how much rain fell in one year. So it's feast or famine, right? And we have to learn how to manage our community and our environment and these stormwater systems in a variety of different scenarios that happen. Now, the graph in the lower right corner talks about rain event distributions in 2020. Feels like we're getting bigger storms more frequently. In 2020, most of the storms were less than an inch. So there's only two storms that were equal to or greater than an inch in 2020. There were seven between a half inch and a 1 inch, and then the rest of them were less than a tenth of an inch or more. So it comes in small chunks, and it also comes in big chunks. Last couple years, I haven't looked at those numbers, but you would definitely see this ebb and flow of storm events that happen from year to year. It makes managing stormwater pretty challenging. Now in 2024 was a lot of significant weather events. And so we actually had four declared disaster declarations in 2024, including the tornado. We had a lot of thunderstorms and straight line winds in May 21st. We had flooding in late June, early July, and then we had the big windstorm in July 31st. And the picture that you see on the right side is kind of a rainfall distribution of the storm that happened in May 21st. And it kind of shows this area right over kind of, I don't know if my cursor comes across the screen, but you had the I-680 loop from there, Midtown, kind of towards the north. Depending on how you look at it, the intensity of the storm was somewhere between 100 and 200-year storm event in terms of how intense it was coming down. And that much water that fast, most systems just can't keep up with it. And we get to experience a lot of the situations that come up with. Now, if you can hear my dogs in the background, I apologize. I know they're eager to see you guys and hang out with you guys and talk about Stormwater, so I apologize for that in advance. So what does this look like on a residential scale? So most of you are going to be homeowners or working at properties that are fairly manageable. And so when I was a landscape contractor in my early years, so in June 2008, there's a storm that happened. And this is a typical neighborhood in West Omaha. Some homes have walkout basements, some don't, but all the water is designed to drain in between the properties. But everyone's properties are right next to each other. So everyone's property lines line up with the adjacent property. And so in June 2008, the storm happened. And then this gentleman gave me a call to see if I could come and help. So the pictures you see here are pictures I took after coming out there and starting to talk with him. These pictures were provided by him of the storm that happened in that year. And you can see how there's white capping water on the chain link fence. He's standing on his deck, and the water itself is getting to within about 3 feet of his property. And so this is a common situation in all parts of the city and in all other cities as well. So managing how water flows into, through, and out of your property is how you want to think about it. This particular gentleman had somebody come out and put little trench drains along the fence line. Trench drains, as you might see in a driveway application, something like that. What this amount of water, that water cannot fit inside of a trench drain fast enough to be able to move it away. As we talk and move through this presentation, you're going to quickly learn that there's constraints to everything to managing stormwater. A pipe can only handle so much water. An inlet, like a trench drain, can only handle so much water. And Mother Nature has a really good ability to one-up us all the time. And so trying to figure out how to manage water the best really kind of comes down to, again, that simple kind of a thought was, how is water coming into, through, and out of my property? And steps for how to do that we'll touch on today. And then there's also some resources I'll share with you as well to help you out at your property. Another example, that this June 2008 storm is particularly, I remember it very well because it was the day my daughter was born. And this storm was rolling in as I was leaving my office after running back and having my wife say that our daughter, that she was in labor and that our daughter was coming. And this storm, about an inch of rain fell in about a half an hour, 80 to 90 mile per hour winds. And so at our shop, I took a picture looking to the northwest, and this site is surrounded by impervious surfaces, parking lots, strip malls. There's no place for the water to go. And so during the storm, all the water from over an acre of runoff had to fit into this one graded manhole. And so when you crunch the numbers on a 1 inch rain, it's about 42,000 gallons of water that's trying to fit into that drain. Now, think about your bathtub, and you plug it up, you fill up your bathtub, and you pop the plug. Does that water go away instantly? No, it takes time for it to go down and fit into it. Same kind of concept here, where um, the parking lot became a bathtub, filled up with water. After the rain stopped, it was able to draw down, fit through the drain, and make its way safely downstream. Um, Water um, can only fit in certain size drains, orifices. And so, one thing to take away from this conversation today is to think about how water, again, is what's coming to you and how is it going to leave. And in the case of this parking lot, for example, our parking lot was just that, a parking lot. There were some cars in there, but our bathtub was never fully deep. it got to about 6 to 8 inches deep. And so the cars were okay in this particular area and the building was okay. But that's not always the case for properties. And so whether you're buying a new home, you're in your own house, businesses, again, look at that area around you and to kind of help make sure you can minimize issues that might come up. Look at that area draining to you and how is water going to leave it if uh, Mother Nature unleashes on you. Now, when we manage stormwater, there's a few different things to think about. So we've been talking about just the intensity of storms and how much water comes with a particular storm. But we also have water quality issues, so water pollution. The picture here is of a construction site in downtown Omaha where a paint can fell out of a dumpster. It was raining, the paint can had washed out into the street. So I was able to stop, take a picture, talk with the property owner to make sure that they could clean up their stuff and keep any more pollution from leaving the site. This is a single instance, but situations like this happen all the time across the city. Our goal in educating folks and responding to things is to try to minimize that pollution as much as possible. Construction sites is a common pollution source as well. So here's a site coming from a construction site leading to a lot of sediment washing out to the street. When you see those black fences around a construction site, that's silt fence. It's meant to help keep sediment from leaving the site. There's also these straw wattles or these tubes of straw that also help. Now, keep in mind all these strategies for managing pollution coming off a site. They're not meant for really intense storms. And so, in situations like this, we work with folks and make sure they have a plan in place to respond to it, to be able to figure out how do we get this cleaned up and maybe improve how we have our construction site set up so that it doesn't happen to this extent in the future. It's an iterative process, and we work with a lot of folks. We take complaints with the community to help people address this kind of water quality issue. I alluded to it a little bit before, but we also have quantity issues when we have so much water that comes so fast. It's, a quantity issue. We have quality and now we have quantity. And this is a picture of our Missouri River Water Resource Recovery Facility that's underneath and just south of the South Omaha Bridge. And this takes most of the east side of Omaha and some of the west side of Omaha. When you flush your toilet, wash your hands, take a shower, this is where your water goes to get cleaned before that water gets released back into the Missouri River. There's another facility that's further south where the Platte River, Papio Creek come together, and that takes the further west and southern communities water from, again, their sanitary systems to clean it and release it back into the Missouri River. Excuse me. And so when we have too much water, the Missouri River floods and we have to respond to that. So this is an example or a picture to kind of highlight flooding happens in a lot of different places. It happens along rivers, but individually by your homes, you probably have situations where you have a flat yard maybe, and the water builds up and sits there for a while. We have a flooding issue there, all resulting from a quantity issue where we need to manage it as best as we can. Now, in 2024, the Missouri River flood was caused by a lot of record rains in the Dakotas, Minnesota, Iowa, and below the Missouri River dams. If some of you remember back in 2011, there was another massive flooding event that happened. But that one lasted for a very long time because it happened up above the dams along the Missouri River. And so you had so much water that filled up all those dams and reservoir sites that the water that came through took a very long time. It was over 100 days of flooding. Fortunately, in 2024, it wasn't as long, But we have responded to a number of flooding events, really significant ones over the years. And so these are just a couple pictures to kind of highlight things that we see during those times that we kind of take for granted when it's dry out there and there isn't flooding going on. When you're down at the Heartland of America Park, for example, and um, you know, all of a sudden that area is designed to flood, but we take it for granted again um, when it's dry. Some other reasons why we manage stormwater is also environmental degradation. As a kid, or even as an adult, maybe you take a hose and you shoot the water at the ground. And we'll say there's not a lot of grass there. What happens? That soil starts to erode, right? That shooting of water from a hose onto the soil erodes it and it washes away. When we have storm sewers that take runoff from our streets, our homes, businesses, all that water goes and gets collected into storm sewers that discharge into streams and drainage ways. Those streams and drainage ways are not meant to handle these fire hoses coming at it. And so you get degradation of the stream corridors throughout town. And so we have to respond to that and figure out different ways and solutions to protect those areas so that private property, uh, public infrastructure are all protected as much as they can. Safety is a big concern too. This is a sidewalk not too far from my own house where I walk with my kids. And you have a sidewalk that has to cross a ditch. And unfortunately, the water is just so strong and so heavy that it starts to wash out things if it's not thoughtfully done. So safety is definitely a concern when it comes to managing stormwater well. And for me, you want to be a good neighbor. So when we live in our homes, we have our businesses and our other communities, centers that we go to. Let's make sure we're doing what we can to be a good neighbor. When we're building something, let's put things in place so that we don't have dirt and mud and other pollution going on our neighbors. Let's make sure that our downspouts aren't directed right at them. And if they have to be, because just the way the lay of the land is, what are some strategies we can do to make sure that water doesn't negatively impact our neighbors? So the old mindset for a lot of folks has been water is a problem. We need to get rid of it as fast as we can. This is a residential homeowner who put in her own storm sewer system so that water coming from the neighbors, if you look at this picture to the left or upstream of her, it goes into this large, great inlet and takes it out and around. Unfortunately, the storms were too big and that hole was too small. It couldn't handle the water, and water continued to flow over this area and into her pool that you see on the right side. So I got called in to help her figure out what she could do to stop that water from coming in. And there isn't an easy solution in this situation. But talking to her, we talked about stormwater management. You can't control it. I don't like the word flood control, stormwater control. It's more about management strategies to deal with that water coming in, traveling through, flowing through, and leaving your property. So we can do it better as long as we're thinking thoughtfully about it and kind of assessing our situations better. So when we talk about stormwater management, we're talking about a plan, again, to manage it as it flows into, through, and out of your area, out of the watershed. And we use different strategies like gray infrastructure or pipes, or green infrastructure, such as the landscape to move water safely through the area. This is a picture of Central High School's green roof over their addition they did a number of years ago near downtown. And so when we do thoughtful things like this, hopefully budgets allow for it. Creative designers think of strategies like this because there's a lot of benefits that go into this particular green roof, but it also creates a really nice setting that's more enjoyable for the people who use this facility and those who visit it. we want to have the right tools in the toolbox when we're doing stormwater management. So there's a whole slew of issues and situations that come up. We take a lot of phone calls, emails of folks who have a variety of situations that happen with them, and it has to do with stormwater. So we need to make sure we have as many tools in our toolbox as possible. And so green infrastructure is one of those that it's relatively new. It's not new anymore. It's been around for quite a while, since the late 90s, officially with that kind of a terminology. But green infrastructure is just a way of saying we're going to use the landscape to preserve, connect, and mimic natural processes to manage rain where it lands. Inlets, pipes, etc., or man-made structures to help move water efficiently, as efficiently as possible. So this is a little bit of a different mindset and a thought, and it takes more people with different skill sets to get involved to manage it, but it's still providing the same function as a storm sewer or an inlet. Now, there's different types of green infrastructure: rain gardens, which is a bowl in the landscape that holds water and then slowly lets it soak in the ground, like this rain garden here, which is I call it a micro rain garden at my home. It takes runoff from my own downspout and my neighbor's downspout as well. Then bioswales, which are essentially vegetated ditches to move water from one place to another. Rain barrels so we can harvest water and reuse it. Soil conditioning, soils act as a sponge. We want them to be sponges. So soil conditioning is a technique to improve the um, sponginess of soils. And then we also have green roofs that we saw a picture of. Permeable pavement that allows water to go through and soak in the ground below pavement versus running off. And trees. Trees are wonderful, excellent things in the landscape to help us manage stormwater. Gray infrastructure, concrete structures, etc., that efficiently move water from a facility. This particular facility is near 20th and Poppleton that takes runoff from the neighborhood. And we collect it and store it in an underground storage system. And then we have different controls on it to hold it back during storm events and then slowly release it once the storm event is gone, so that we don't cause additional flooding somewhere else within the community. And so there, we could actually have a whole presentation just on real-time controls and stormwater management. But this is an example of trying to use man-made structures to mimic natural processes. So this site acts more like nature than if we just had the pipe in there and water flowed through this area as fast as possible. In Omaha, we have generally two types of sewers. We have our combined sewers, which in this map in the top left corner is roughly 72nd Street to the east. And we have our MS4 or municipal separate storm sewer system. So the sanitary and the storm sewer are in separate pipes. In the combined system, they're in the same. So when it's raining in the CSO area, when you're using your sink, your toilet, your shower, that flow is going into the same pipe as runoff from the street. And when we have too much flow, typically it only takes 1/10 of an inch in some parts of the city to create overflow, which means there's too much flow in the system, and that water overflows and goes directly untreated into our receiving waters, like the Missouri River or Coal Creek. And so that's a really it's not a good thing. And our CSO program, we'll touch on here in just a sec, aims to address that. On the MS4 side of things, the separate storm sewer system, the Omaha Stormwater Program is kind of the point person for that and has a program set up with 8 different areas in it to help educate the public, get them involved, figure out if somebody's dumping something illegally into our receiving water or into the storm sewer. That's what illicit discharges are. We talked about construction site runoff a little bit already. After a site is developed, post-construction runoff is about managing runoff from new developments or redeveloped areas. Industrial stormwater is for those facilities that do industrial processes. Good housekeeping means the city is going to do a good job of managing stormwater. And a BMP assessment is to say what works and what doesn't, and how can we learn from that. So that's the stormwater program. The CSO program, or the combined sewer system, is one of 800 communities in the US that has to meet the Clean Water Act because they have a combined sewer system. So our system, would generate about 8 billion gallons of combined sewage annually into our receiving waters. We have over 2,000 miles of sewers, and the combined sewer service area is about 45 square miles. There's 9 outfalls to Papillion Creek, 17 to Missouri River, and so far there's been 4 deactivated. That deactivated number is going to continue to go up as we implement the program to address these combined sewer overflows. Now, combined system, again, we have a curb inlet, as you see here in the foreground, that goes into a pipe, and then you have the pipe that comes from your house tying into the same pipe. So when there's runoff in our neighborhoods, water goes into those inlets, goes down. You got runoff from the roof. We have the flows coming from the homes coming in. And because of that extra water coming in from the runoff, it goes over that wall and it goes straight into the river, resulting in a combined sewer overflow. Separated system is just the opposite of that, is that there's 2 pipes instead of 1, with the runoff going into its own pipe, the sanitary going into its own. Now, to address our combined sewer system, it's in a very mature part of town, right? There's a lot of old homes and businesses, and so we have to figure out what's the best way to achieve regulatory compliance, do it um, in a way that's affordable to our community and that they accept it as well. So we look at those things, and that's kind of what fed into the program and why we're doing what we're doing. Now, the plan is called a long-term control plan. It has a lot of different elements to it. And simply put, there's sewer separations. So instead of 1 pipe, we have 2. We use green infrastructure. We're using high-rate treatment facilities and underground storage as well as different strategies to reduce the amount of combined sewer overflows. The plan should hopefully be implemented by 2037. That's what our permit says, and that's what we provided to our regulators to say, here's our plan, and we can get this plan in and completed by 2037. Now move it into green infrastructure a little bit. I don't see any questions in the chat, but if you do have questions, put them in. At this point, I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit to just show you some examples of sites across town, specifically about green infrastructure. If there's something specific that you have questions on that we've gone over so far, let me know. Otherwise, we'll make our way into some more pretty pictures and some examples of green infrastructure across the city. So Fontenelle Park is up at Northeast Omaha, right off Ames, Fontenelle Boulevard in Ames. And the lagoon was expanded and deepened to store more water as part of a sewer separation project with our CSO program. And so water comes in through outfalls like this one that you see within that retaining wall there and makes its way into the lagoon. Around the park, around the lagoon, we have lots of native and adapted plants there. And this lagoon holds water. And once it gets filled up, it slowly goes back into the combined system at a slower rate. There's less of it because when water comes into the lagoon, it evaporates. The plants use it. And so we're able to improve the overall function of our sewer system by having something like this that can store water and slow it down and clean it. Turning the camera around and looking towards the east from that uh, outfall from the storm sewer there, this area here that has cattails around it. And then there's a little bit of a wall that you can see in that gap between the cattails, and there's a wall there. This is kind of a forebay. Runoff from our communities can carry a lot of stuff with it, and so this area kind of helps capture that, keep it contained before going into the lagoon itself. Here's a picture looking at that edge of that pool area I just described. Lagoons to the left, that pre-treatment area, and the cattails are to the right. You can see some ducks swimming around there. I was actually at Fontenelle Park this morning, walking around, taking a look and seeing how everything's starting to fill in. We do have some invasive weeds that come in, and so we have a contract that we may manage with a contractor to make sure we stay on top of it and make sure that the plants we want to grow, and the ones that we don't, we're removing them as quickly as possible so they don't become an issue. Adams Park wetlands is about 35th and Bedford, Bedford in between Bedford and Maple, and there's 276 acres that drain into the park. We have a series of pools like you see here, little riffles, little streams. And then on the other side of that wall that you see in the background, that's a culvert. There's a wetland area on the other side of that. But this whole system could hold a lot of water, 77 acre feet, 7.7 acre feet of storage before it goes back into the combined system. Again, further shrinking the size of pipe that we need and not having as much water ultimately overflow into the Missouri River. The park before was a series of baseball fields and a detention basin that wasn't really functional before. So the baseball fields are on the north side of the park, and that basin's on the south side. And on the right side is the rendering of the site when it was in design. This video shows, it's one of my favorite videos. There was a quick little storm in 2017. It was only 0.07 inches of rain at Adams Park. Now, what you see here is 276 acres of residential neighborhood are draining through storm sewers coming into this structure, and this structure helps try to keep most of the trash out. Um, and so it takes some time. The storm had passed, so I'm able to stand there and videotape this. But in 7 minutes, you can see how quickly all the water that's kind of flowing in the neighborhood is coming down and finally getting to Adams Park. This is also the very first storm of 2017. And so, as you can see in the videos, the water is almost black in nature. So it's really pretty gross stuff, call it urban slobber, so to speak. And so you get the first flush of sand, salt, grit that has built up over the winter time. And we designed the park again to kind of capture and take the brunt of some of that stuff coming in so it's easier to manage. But as I move a little bit further through this video, you can see how quickly it builds up and how intense and the scale of water that we're talking about. If everybody in this 276 acres did a rain garden, it would help, but you still are going to get a lot of flows that get funneled down to parts of our community that have to figure out how we manage that. So this is a good example to kind of show you the scale that we're working at with from this homeowner scale all the way up to the storm sewers scale and where it ultimately funnels down to. When you look inside that structure after a small storm like that, you see a lot of debris in there. And oftentimes our sewer maintenance division will come in here and vac up 1,500 gallons of debris like this after about a 1-inch storm event or less. On this particular storm in 2018, there was a 2.4-inch rain event. Now, I'd ask you if you knew how much water that is, but since it's more of a me talking to you guys, this storm event generated about 17.8 million gallons of runoff, um, or about 7.2 million gallons if it was just a 1-inch rain. So you can really see the scale of runoff in our community and how fast it can really add up. Here's some pictures of the wetlands on the north side of the park where you can see the cattails and the native grasses in the background, really starting to fill in and looking nice. Ducks are a common thing here. Cattails get a little aggressive, and so we're just wrapping up cleaning out as many of the cattails as we can. We're going to do some more cattail cleaning next year, because those cattails will kind of clog the system. Excuse me. And so all these systems do require maintenance. Excuse me. I'll go a little bit quicker through this as my voice is starting to go a little bit. During those storms we talked about earlier, they could cause havoc, and so this structure overflowed last year and caused some damage around the structure that we're having to repair. So when we try new things like this green infrastructure, we do have to respond to Mother Nature, and we do. And so this area is getting repaired and put back together. Because once Mother Nature shows us one thing, we adapt and move forward. But the good thing is plants are pretty resilient, and they grow back quickly, and they do a great job of holding on to the soil in areas where it flows. Some other sites, Spring Lake Park, if you ever get a chance. This is we saw a picture of it earlier in the presentation, but here, uh, the Spring Lake Elementary School, South High School is within walking distance and will sometimes bring their students down and do tours of the park. The neighborhood really was instrumental in making sure that this park came together, where there's a walking trail, it's a fishable lake, there's wetlands above the lake as well. And as you go further north up that valley and to the west, there's another valley. There's a whole lot of different things going on to make sure that the water's nice and clean by the time it gets to the lake. As you drive into the park, there's a parking lot and there's a bioretention or a rain garden that's inside the parking lot. So the parking lot will drain to this area. Plants get free irrigation as a result. And we put up some signage so people are aware of what they're looking at when they're at the park. Kind of looks like just a woodland here, in the areas where water's making its way down towards the lake. Excuse me. And just north of the lake is the wetland area where you get a lot of cattails, get a lot of frogs. So it's a really beautiful area, um, in this area. So I would encourage you to visit Spring Lake Park whenever you get a chance. Another picture of the lake, just off of the parking lot. Ultimately, when all this water is making its way to the lake, well, the lake fills up, but then where does that water go from the lake? Ultimately, water gets skimmed off the top, and you can see, um, when it gets skimmed off the top, it goes into the storm sewer. It takes it underneath F Street and allows it to flow through another channel back into the storm sewer, where it ultimately goes down to the Missouri River. And the lower right-hand picture, you see a cone, a bar cone grate. If there's a big enough storm that fills up the whole lake, the water will go there into that inlet. And then that hill behind it is F Street, and that's a high hazard dam. And so the whole system is designed to make sure that um, if and when we get those really big storms, there's always a way for water to get out. And so at your homes, at your businesses, think about if this fills up, then what? Always kind of think about that redundancy so that water always has a means to go somewhere thoughtfully and not potentially negatively impacting our neighbors. Hitchcock Park is off of 42nd and Q Street. There's a series of 3 rain gardens that take runoff from the east. Albright Park is down by Sarpy Avenue, just underneath the Highway 75, this bridge right there. So it's in South Omaha. Beautiful area, a lot of natural native grasses mixed in next to the park right there. A little bit further south from there, along Sarpy Ave, is a large wetland area with a meandering stream in there. In the fall time, it's beautiful. Here's an aerial picture of it. The street on the left-hand side is Harrison Street. So that's the county line right there. So half of this is in Sarpy County, half of it's in Douglas County. We worked with those communities as part of a sewer separation project to manage water coming from the south and from our neighbors and from the community and manage it in a nice, thoughtful way. Rockbrook Tributary is um, southwest of 114th and West Center, and it's by Prairie Lane Park, Prairie Lane Elementary School. And it was a concrete line channel, and we were able to get some funding to be able to pull that channel out and put back a natural system there instead. There's a picture of it in early spring last year as it goes in between homes looking to the north. Here's an aerial photograph of that same area. Center Street is at the top of the picture. And so this channel runs between homes going south to Prairie Lane Park. Hell Creek is just on the other side of 120th Street, south of Center Street. Again, it was a concrete lined channel. It was put in the 70s as a way to prevent flooding. And the goal was to get water out as fast as possible. The concrete deteriorated. It wasn't providing the function it needed to. And so we were able to pull that out and put the vegetated system in, which has really attracted the ducks, and the neighbors really love it. So we have a maintenance contract here. I work with the neighbors. And a lot of them have grown to love the area and the ducks that are in that particular area as a result. Definitely go to omahaplants.org, omahastormwater.org, and the Omaha Stormwater Programs Facebook page to get a lot of resources, including our Sustainable Landscapes Manual, which is geared towards the homeowner scale, homeowner focused, and then the Bioretention Gardens manual that's geared towards contractors and designers. Lots of good information in both. Encourage you all to go and check them out. And with that, I'll open up to any questions, and I want to just thank you. Thank you, Conservation Nebraska, for inviting me, and hope everyone enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you so much for putting this on. We're going to go ahead and launch the survey. If everybody could just take a minute to fill that out, we would greatly appreciate it. And if anybody has any questions, just go ahead and put those in the chat. I do have a question, Andy. So like, you talked about the old concrete spillway that they had. So are they in the process of like updating the majority of those so that they're like more natural vegetation, or is that process done for the city?
Every project, all our infrastructure is kind of evaluated for what's going to be the best means to address a given situation. There isn't an active effort to convert pipes to vegetation or anything like that. Um, but the projects I've showed were primarily associated with our CSO program. And so our CSO program looked at how to manage a runoff in our combined sewer service areas, primarily with, you know, gray infrastructure. And so we um, have that kind of a solution in mind, but we challenge our designers to look at green infrastructure as a tool to see if it could do better. And so in the case of Spring Lake Park here, for example, it provided a better solution for that situation. And that's the big picture way of thinking about it, how we utilize it.
Okay, well, I don't see any questions in the chat or anything. So if everybody is done filling out their survey and there's no questions, then we can just go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you everybody for being here. Thank you, Andy, for putting this on. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I guess there is a question. It says, we have a new apartment development planned near our home. How can we take action to be sure they manage their stormwater?
Hi, Clyde. Great question. Any new development that is going to go in town, they have to meet what's called the post-construction stormwater ordinance. And that ordinance says you have to manage a half an inch over your project site. Now, what does that mean exactly? To kind of give it context is you look at the site, um, how it was back in 2006 as kind of a baseline, and you have to manage a half an inch um, for your new development and make sure it doesn't change how water runs off of it. So if you have a site that it was primarily impervious before for a long time, because if memory served me correct, you're in older part of town, um, it's not going to solve runoff problems, but the goal is to make it as good or better from there because they're going to manage to half an inch over their site before they release that water, and they can't increase how fast that water discharges off the site either. It's something we call a no adverse impact. And so this is a good step. It will not solve all issues associated with a given site. And I'm not really familiar with the apartments, what the site was before the apartments, but that at least will be in there, and it's a requirement for all sites. If you have a specific concern, you can definitely reach out to me as well, and I can answer any other more specific questions.
Yes, and we will send out a follow-up email, and we can include Andy's contact information in there. So if anybody wants to contact him, they don't have to write down his email address. We will send out a follow-up and we can include that in there. So that was a great question. Thank you so much, Andy. If there isn't anything else, then we will just go ahead and end the webinar.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.